Good evening, everyone. I am R. Allen Brooks, the host of TEDxMileHigh Vision, and I'm joined by Dr. Eric French, the Medical Director of Adult Psychiatric Services at the HealthONE Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. If you don't already have your tickets to TEDxMileHigh Vision on Saturday, I encourage you to get your tickets now and join us for this free and virtual event. All right, Dr. French, thanks for joining us tonight.
Absolutely.
I know you got to be extremely busy, so tell us about your experience in the pandemic so far.
Well, first, thanks so much for having me on. I'm really honored to be part of this with you folks. Throughout the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen a complete hijack of the landscape of mental and behavioral health providing, not only in the way that patients access their care, but also in the way that we as providers are able to make contact with our patients and keep them engaged.
Well, I know that cases have increased dramatically in the last month or so, what are the different ways that you see COVID-19 impacting our communities?
Well, specifically, we are seeing a point in time where people who maybe didn't even have any history of mental or behavioral health issues now have them just because of the level of stress that they're all under. People are dealing with depression and anxiety who had previously never experienced anything like that. And then you have people who had a chronic history of depression or anxiety or schizophrenia, bipolar, you name it. But they are all decompensating because of the level of stress that's been added on top of what they deal with on a day-to-day basis. Not only from COVID-19, but from the election and from some of the protests. So we're in a point in time right now where people are handling a lot more than they're used to handling.
All right, so there are definitely a lot of exacerbating factors. From your perspective, what communities are being impacted the most?
Well, unfortunately, the Black and Latino communities are being affected the greatest right now. We're seeing disproportionate numbers where the Black community is being affected 3 times as high as the white community, and the Latino community even further.
So with all of this, how is this affecting demand for care and our capacity to respond?
Now, more so than ever, people are realizing that their mental health is in a fragile state just because of the marathon nature of COVID-19 and how this is impacting their day-to-day. And as a result, people are reaching out for care. They're recognizing that this is not a sprint that they could just put their head down and shoulder through. Rather, this is a marathon, and people are wondering where they are in terms of this race and how much energy they have in reserve to finish this thing out.
You know, that's a really interesting thing because, I know that a lot of us at the beginning of this pandemic felt that it might not be for that long. And so the plans that we put in place were for sort of temporary measures. How have you been seeing people adjust as they've realized that it's going to be more of a long term?
I think there's a greater sense of fear. What I'm noticing is that, just as you said, people felt like maybe this was something they could batten down the hatches and deal with for a few months. But as people are recognizing that this is something that's going to go on well into 2021, they're worried about how this is going to impact not only themselves, but their families, their jobs, the economy at large. And so people are really going through it. They're becoming more anxious every day.
How's it been for like you and your colleagues? Like, how are healthcare professionals dealing with the effects of this pandemic?
We definitely feel it. I think that there has been a greater sense overall amongst my colleagues, certainly myself, with remaining mission focused. This is really not a time to lose focus of why we come to work each day and treat our patients the way that we do. And so that has been one encouraging vibe or sense that has come through the hospital, is really just this renewed commitment to why we come to work each day. And but we are feeling the strain, we're feeling the stress. There has been a far greater demand across the board in terms of being able to facilitate the influx of patients who are accessing their care needs right now.
Yeah. I'm interested in just the idea of balance, right? Because health professionals, you are having to be mission focused. How are you finding balance in your own lives, like, family, something away? Because I know that you could just be in that space caring for people constantly.
It's a little more challenging. I think it takes a much more concerted effort overall. People who I'm working with and interacting with, the nurses, the physicians, every level of the multidisciplinary care team, we are all aware that in order for us to be 100% for the patients we're caring for, we need to take a very strong approach to making certain that we are functioning at our best, meaning that we're watching what we eat, we're optimizing our sleep insofar as we're able to. We're very aware of how we need to stay calm and engage in this marathon with our patients.
Okay, so tell us about the HealthONE Behavioral Health and Wellness Center. Like, what's your focus there?
So, as my title suggests, I'm Medical Director of Adult Inpatient Psychiatry at HealthONE Behavioral Health and Wellness, and is typically on anyone 18 to say 65. I have a 40-bed unit that is always very, very busy, and certainly making sure that things continue to run well on that unit despite the new level of stress, the new level of decompensation, the new level of agitation even. That we are continuing to provide the best level care that we can for our patients. I also perform ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, for the hospital, which we also have seen a massive uptick in the numbers for. And so each day, with the exception of Tuesdays, I'm in doing ECT in the morning before I hit the floors and start to see my patients.
I've seen sort of this shift to telemedicine, like people trying to get things done online. I mean, I guess everything is shifted online to some degree. So have you found people embracing telemedicine?
I do, on the whole.
Yeah.
It was really incredible, Alan, the way that people were able to just switch and really push quickly into having a telehealth model. I will say that the younger the patient population, the more ease of this transition. You find youth and adolescent patients as well as adult patients finding more comfort with accessing technological aspects of medicine. But I have seen that in some of our senior adult populations, those who might not have computers at home, those who might not have smartphones, feeling in some senses left out, just because many of them who are living in either an assisted living facility or a nursing home, they don't have the same kind of access, and they are really on lockdown for the safety of the other residents. And so they've had a greater struggle, I think, throughout this, trying to make sure that they have access and direct lines to mental health providers.
Yeah. Is there any particular strategy for reaching out to people who don't feel comfortable with telemedicine?
I think that one of the nice things that we've seen lately, although I'm not certain how long it's going to stay this way, is that outpatient offices have begun reopening. And I think that being able to sit down face-to-face with a provider is something that they've been much more comfortable with throughout their lives.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm really hoping that there's some way that we can find added support for helping them access telehealth options, because as the numbers increase and we see that the ability to get out and about is maybe more questionable as we move forward, I want to make sure that there is some way that for people who have been uncomfortable, we identify that population and we start to reach out and offer added support, whether that be a social worker or somebody providing added support so that they understand how to utilize telehealth and how to ask their questions and receive the care that they need.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you talk about that. I was thinking about how change is always stressful to all of us, even people who embrace change. And in this case, sort of every aspect of our lives have changed. And I was thinking about, you're talking about the adjustment to telemedicine. I find my own resistance to telebanking, right?
Sure.
Like I like to give my check to a person and get a receipt back so that I can be like, I gave it to that person. And now it's like, take a picture of a check and I feel like every part of my soul fighting it, right?
Right.
And that's not even something that is vital to my health. So I just think about what the added struggles of, I don't know, just facing all this change.
It's interesting, you're not alone in that. I think a lot of people have some uncertainties when it comes to functioning exclusively online. Our information is vulnerable at times, and despite being reassured that it's not, we still hear about leaks in information and things that
Right.
make people nervous. And so I think it's natural to have a lot of anxiety as everything that we do starts to be pushed towards an online model. I think you're right. People do prefer having the option to be across from somebody, interact with them directly, and not hope that they understood your email or your questions or your text message accurately.
Right.
It's challenging, and I think that it makes people feel more isolated because there's less human contact, and that also plays a factor in people feeling lonely.
Right. Yeah. There are some impacts just with the pandemic as a whole. There have been things that have changed that people are looking to keep, like being able to work from home or things like that. Do you find things within your purview, your profession, that you think are positive advancements that have come during this time?
Yeah, I will say that now having the ability to provide such streamlined care for our patients via telehealth,
Yeah.
that is nice because you have all of these underserved areas, whether they be rural or they're just too few providers. And now with us having much more ease of interaction and interfacing with our patients via telehealth, they are not as isolated as they were before. I will say that coming with the ability to work from home, we've also seen this trend in there being higher expectations across the board for employees. And I have seen a lot of working from home or remote working fatigue, as it were.
Yeah.
Because not only are you providing your service for your employer from home, but your kids are home too now.
Right.
And so you have become employee with some greater expectations because they figure you're home, you can handle it.
Right.
But you're also teacher and interfacing with your kids amidst that. And it has shown to be really stressful for some people. Others are very comfortable with it.
Right.
But there's certainly a good contingency that says this is not as nice as I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. There's not such a clear delineation between your work life and your home life if you're doing it all in one place.
Exactly. People had a sense of daily flow that's been completely changed. It's radically different now.
Yeah.
They would get into work, make their coffee, interact with a couple of their friends from work. These things are gone. It's just you and your computer and your children, your family members, and trying to figure out how to make that feel like a normal work day it's not easy.
Right. So, obviously we talked about how people thought that the pandemic would be for a short amount of time. I wonder if people's level of openness to the types of treatment you offer, have you seen it change? Have you seen them build more resistance or become more open as we've gotten deeper and deeper into this quarantine?
That's a good question. To be completely honest with you, I feel there's more openness. I think a lot of people have been backed into a corner, so to speak, and what they tried to put off early on has become more and more challenging as the months march forward. And I think at this point they're realizing that I can't go this alone for much longer. I do need to ask for help. The key, I think, is to get people to feel comfortable enough to access help before it's crisis level.
Yeah. Okay, well, so then what are the options that are available for people's treatment?
Well, aside obviously from inpatient level of care when someone is perhaps in crisis mode or needing a full overhaul on their medications, once they've been stabilized from the inpatient side, we try to step them down so that it's a smooth progression towards outpatient level care. So they would leave the hospital and ideally participate in something like a partial hospitalization program, which meets Monday through Friday, say 9 in the morning to 2:30. And during that time, they're getting a lot of group therapy sessions, access to their psychiatrists, and there is a more supportive environment, but they're going home each night now. Once they've graduated through that, then we try to step them into an intensive outpatient programming, and that's where they'll come 3 days a week, for example, maybe for a couple of weeks. And then once you've graduated through that, then maybe you're more comfortable and in a far stronger place to go back to seeing your psychiatrist once or twice a month. But as well, when we're talking about things that are offered on the inpatient side of things, maybe a little bit more aggressive forms of treatment, we have electroconvulsive therapy, which is great in a pinch, and sometimes even great for a first-line treatment. For example, if somebody was really decompensated, having severe anxiety, and slipped into, say, a catatonic state where they're not really interacting with their environment, they're not feeding themselves, taking care of themselves, they're not showering or eating, you try not to wait on some of those more upper level forms of treatment like electroconvulsive therapy. They can be a real lifesaver. One of the things that I'm excited about with regard to HealthONE Behavioral Health and Wellness is that we're bringing on transcranial magnetic stimulation. And this is another similarly aggressive form of treatment in that it's done every day, 5 days a week, but less invasive as electroconvulsive therapy, and can help significantly with things like treatment-resistant depression, obsessive-compulsive disorder, smoking cessation. And there are also other protocols that are in place for post-traumatic stress disorder, and any number of things, cognitive enhancement, attention deficit disorder. And so the ability to be able to offer that to our patients is going to be very exciting. It's a technology that is fascinating. The company that I'm working with is called Brainsway.
Okay.
And they have a unique form of transcranial magnetic stimulation in that most of them can only reach cortical structures, just maybe 1.5 centimeters below the scalp. So you're treating things at the cortical level. Brainsway's machines can reach up to 6 centimeters below the scalp. And so you're talking about subcortical structures where, in my opinion, the sky's the limit. You can treat any number of conditions when you can shape a coil specifically to target a brain region that's been known to be associated with certain issues.
Wow.
And so the ability to bring that on and watch as that unfolds and the technology continues to improve is going to be huge for our patients.
That's fascinating.
It's exciting.
All right, well, so this is good stuff, but obviously we're talking about heavy stuff. So bear with me here.
Sure.
Years ago, I was talking with a friend, and I used a sentence that was all slang, which almost never happens. She was house sitting and was going to have a party, and I said, "Yo, will homegirl trip if we're all posseed up at her crib?" And she said, "I have no idea what you're saying." Right, which is almost never happened. But the reason I bring that story up is because I think a lot of times you can use context to try to break down what words people are saying. I want to make sure that people understand what decompensate is, because I've heard it a few times. So would you explain that a bit?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. When I'm referring to a decompensated medical condition or mental health condition, it is something that's more of a chronic nature. And most people are able to stabilize that throughout the course of their lives. They're not in crisis mode. They can function with it. It's still there, but they've gotten to a level where they're able to proceed with their daily lives, function at work, function at home. Decompensated refers to the state when that level of functionality is slipping. And so people are not able to meet the requirements, the obligations, the needs that either they or their families have from them. And so that starts to slip, and that's when you really start to worry as a psychiatrist. I want to intervene as early as possible when I see someone's stable condition begin to decompensate, just so that we can avoid crisis level necessities.
Thanks for that. Yeah,
sure.
Okay, and so another thing I find, you were talking about how in this time of everything being virtual, people can feel very sort of separated. And I think when it comes to just our medical care and all, like, as much as we can learn who the person is behind the position, all that stuff, that's always helpful. So I want to kind of talk about how you found your way into this area of medicine as a whole. Can you share a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. So originally from Massachusetts, grew up in kind of a gritty area, not places that you would want to go on vacation per se. And spent a lot of time on the streets. It was a tough area, a lot of gang activity, things that people don't want to see or don't want to be a part of. And so at a very young age, I found myself really reading people because I wanted to know if I was safe or not.
Right.
And what were they about to do? What was going on in their minds? And for some odd reason, that stayed with me through all of my childhood and upbringing. I've become very interested in people's behaviors and what was motivating them, why they were choosing to do certain things versus others. And, it stayed with me throughout most of my life. I graduated high school and was very concerned about staying in that environment because I had a newborn baby girl at that point. My daughter Carliana was born when I was 17 years old.
Wow.
And so knowing that I couldn't have a job that was going to provide insurance or enough money to take care of her, and knowing that I was living in this area that was less than desirable and probably was going to lead to me doing less in my life if I had stayed around, I joined the military and was in the Army National Guard for 8 years, including 2 years in active ready reserve. And so I was working as a forward observer with the field artillery throughout the course of that, and trying to figure out what to do with myself, with my life. I'd grown up in a household where, you know, college wasn't necessarily a common conversation. We were on the lower socioeconomic status, and my mother had been the first person in her family to graduate from high school. And so college really wasn't the buzzword in the house. And in fact, there was a lot of concern around how we might be able to pay for college. There again, the military made some sense because I knew I would get some assistance in that regard. But I was very nervous about what to be and had only received training on how to blow things up with artillery rounds. And so, you know, as time marched forward, I was considerably worried about what to do, and had a conversation over dinner one night with somebody who asked if I had ever considered the medical field. And I was like, no, I'm not really smart enough for that kind of thing. And she said, listen, military personnel make great healthcare providers because you guys can focus on the mission despite chaos and stress. And I thought that makes a lot of sense. And for me, the more I thought about it, that duty to serve that drew me to being in the military would transfer very nicely to a career in the medical field, just because I always want to take care of others, provide for others, provide protection, safety, you know, and so it plugged in so nicely. And, you know, I started off taking some nursing classes, got into an RN program, which back then was very easy if you were a guy. There were so few males working in the nursing field. And as that progressed into the point in my education where I was going into medical facilities and doing clinical training, I was watching residents and physicians, and I thought, their job looks really nice. They're the ones creating the care plan that is going to get this person well. And I thought, why can't I try that? I'll give it a shot. If I don't make it there, that's fine. You know, whatever ceiling I hit, that's fine. I'm excited that I got there. I took it further than I thought I would. And so I just kept plugging away at it, and I got my bachelor's in science from University of Massachusetts Amherst. Graduated summa cum laude from the Commonwealth Honors College, and my degree was in psychological neuroscience, which met a lot of the prerequisites for medical school. And, you know, just as scared as ever, but continuing to press forward, I took the MCATs and applied for schools, and somehow I got in. I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was a very non-traditional student, having a young one, and having spent years in the military. I wasn't your typical graduate, and so somebody found a warm place in their heart to let me in. And so I actually ended up getting accepted to Touro College of Osteopathic Medicine in Harlem in New York City, which was very exciting. I loved the fact that the grind of Harlem matched the grind that I grew up in, and just felt very honored to be in an area where so many people were underserved and needed somebody to care about their health status. And so it was an excellent experience. But I thought the entire way through, I'm psychological neuroscience background, I want to do neurology, and I want to do pediatric neurology and specialize in neurodevelopmental disorders. You couldn't have told me different. It didn't end up playing out that way, and most of my mentors kept asking if I would consider psychiatry, and I was like, no, I didn't learn 4 years of medicine to talk about feelings, but I realized that the interactions that I was having with my patients was far more focused on how they felt about what was going on with them in any setting. And so I tried my first rotation, and it fit like one of my old Red Sox hats, and it was perfect. And I fell in love instantly. And if I could choose 1,000 times over, I would pick psychiatry again. You know, and I've had this return to being in an environment where I can try to connect with individuals and learn what's motivating their behaviors and how I might be able to offer any kind of assistance to improve their mental and emotional well-being.
I got to say, there's something really beautiful about your path. Just you didn't just decide I'm going to be a doctor. It just came from within. You grew into the thing that mattered to you.
I appreciate that. I feel very blessed to be able to do what I do. I feel like it's a huge honor to be in a position to interact and interface with patients who are in very fragile states. And I feel that at any point along the way, had things gone even just a little differently, things could have changed radically and maybe not necessarily for the better. So I just feel incredibly lucky, incredibly blessed to be in a position to offer dignified and respectful care to people who are in crisis.
Right on. So listen, your unique experience, your path to becoming a doctor, do you find that the experiences you've had in life allow you a different means of connecting with your patients?
There's no doubt about it. I've been in some very tough spots myself, even some dark places myself. And I think having that understanding and recognizing how challenging life can be in certain settings, and how that really wears away at someone's resilience and hopefulness.
Yeah.
It has definitely made it easier for me to understand where a lot of my patients are coming from. There's no doubt that has made it easier for me to connect with people.
Okay, so what do you think are some of the main misconceptions that people are having about COVID-19?
Oh, I think one of the greatest current misconceptions, as the economy has begun to open up and people are coming out, they're going back to restaurants, is that maybe we've gotten through the toughest of this and maybe I don't need to be as strict with my mask. But this is not over yet. And we have another wave that's coming that is combining with flu season, and we're already experiencing significant increases in the numbers and new cases and individuals in the ICU, on vents. This is happening all over again with more strength. And so I'm concerned about the misconception that I can go out and everything's fine. This really hasn't impacted me tremendously. Maybe I had a friend who had it, wasn't that bad. On the inpatient side of things and working in medical centers, we see the ones who are significantly impacted, and it's frightening. And I think a lot of people are a little bit removed from that. I think it is challenging when you don't see it each day to understand how significant it is and how frightening it can become.
Right.
And so I'm certainly hoping that people have a renewed sense of, let's beat this, let's flatten that curve, let's do whatever is in our capacity to do as responsible individuals to try to get on top of this thing and get rid of it. Certainly one of the things that stands out is we as a society have had to have a much higher degree of self-awareness. Not only to be aware of where we're at emotionally and mentally, behaviorally, but in terms of our actions, what we do. Are we touching our faces? Are we taking our mask off and talking to each other? We've had to become a lot more self-aware of the details of our behavior and how we interact. Additionally, we have to be a lot more self-aware about how we're managing our stress level. And so, doing things that are constructive instead of responding to stress by, say, drinking more or, smoking more weed to target the anxiety, these things are actually really detrimental and can destroy a person's ability to interact. And the stress is continuing to climb. And so the tendency would be to escalate drinking or escalate substance use to kind of escape the stress for a couple of minutes.
Right.
But really what we need to be focusing our self-awareness to is finding ways to take better care of ourselves. And that is through optimizing sleep, getting some regular exercise, making sure that we're putting good fuel into our bodies. Even practicing some mindfulness meditation, just taking a second to slow our minds down, because I know they're running a mile a minute. I mean, there's just so many things to think about. People have had stress due to the election. They've had stress due to being furloughed. They've had stress due to, riots. And there's a lot of unsettled feelings in us. And people are angry and they're upset. And so if we are not careful and self-aware, we won't make good choices on managing this. And for many of us who have children at home and things of that nature, we need to show them how to function through very high stress environments and still be productive and to still be there for your family.
Yeah.
And so if we are not really self-aware about the way that we're engaging with work and family, that we're not taking out our stress on the wrong people, that we're taking it to the weights or taking it to a walk outside, I think that things can go wrong very quickly. And so that self-awareness has to be on the forefront of all of our minds.
Well, you saw that I was really getting into what you were saying. I almost forgot I was interviewing you. It was very inspiring. I just, especially for me, just being the ways that we deal with stress are going to affect the way that our children deal with stress and our family. We're teaching them by example. And this is an excellent time for us to invest in our own health and teach healthy practices to the people around us. So I wanted to ask, you talk about increased stress and some of the misconceptions around COVID. How do you think the election and political division specifically have impacted our communities when it comes to these topics?
Oh man, it's tremendous, the amount of pressure that has compounded throughout this process. So the big concern with that is that people are sensing a greater and greater loss of that locus of control that they once had in their lives, feeling like things were under control. I know what's going on. There are just so many question marks. And that leads to increased anxiety. People want some certainty, things that they can count on, things that they can understand and cope with.
Yeah.
And so with all of this going on top of having a global pandemic that's threatening the way that we do everything, I think it leaves people in a position where they are much more uncertain of things, much more uncertain of the future, uncertain of how to get through this. And that's where we start to see, feelings of hopelessness unfortunately begin to build.
Well, yeah, so, that made me think just about, you were talking about working from home and being teacher and all that stuff. So, now we have all these students who are isolated at a time when they would be developing their sort of social practices, like learning how to be out in the world, and now they're having to stay home. How do you think that's affecting families and the students and the parents?
It's an excellent point. Particularly in some of our younger patients, just younger individuals, their social interactions are everything to them. It really shows them who they are, who they're not. That's their whole lives. And when you don't have a lifelong history of difficult experiences, that puts them in crisis mode very quickly. This is the biggest thing that they've ever dealt with. And so we've seen a lot of stress and strain as younger people are separated from their friends. They really can't make the same kind of sense of this that adults can. And it's been really difficult. And as a result, parents at home, they're under their own stresses. They're seeing their kids having their own set of stresses. And unless you have a good connection to answers or resources, that puts you in a really difficult spot. As a parent, wondering how to reach your kids, how to talk to them about what's happening in language that not only they can understand, but they can appreciate. And that's been a very difficult aspect. One of the interesting things that we have seen in response to what's going on with the youth and adolescent population is that this whole telehealth model has been a piece of cake for them. And in fact, in some of the modalities that we discussed earlier, like partial hospitalization program or intensive outpatient program, they're almost more honest from home on their devices. You don't have that immediate pressure of somebody sitting right next to you.
Right.
And I've seen them respond really quite well to that. So again, just sort of emphasizing access to care and making sure that people are catching that stuff early. Once you notice that your child is not really acting his or herself, and that this is going on for a protracted period of time, not waiting on that, but really encouraging them and giving them a space to access care is so important, because again, this is a marathon and this is changing everything in everyone's lives. But certainly as a young person, trying to make heads or tails of this is that much more challenging.
Yeah, and so I want to emphasize, just for whoever's watching, that there is a place within your program for young people to engage and get
Absolutely.
the help that they need. Because I think that's just something that we overlook a lot,
It's true. And as a sort of a flagship facility for mental and behavioral health within all of HCA's hospitals, we pride ourselves on having our finger on the pulse of the community and knowing what their needs are and actually having an answer for that. And that's one of the reasons that I was so drawn to this hospital in the first place. But yes, it's so important to have something to provide because, again, just like you and I have been talking about, this is going to get more stressful before it gets easier.
Right. Okay, well, so then what are some healthy habits that individuals can practice at home to bolster their mental health?
This is probably the most important thing that we'll talk about because it really is essentially how we are going to make it through this in one piece. And I think that it starts with the habits that we adopt. That self-awareness has to kick in to say, I haven't been managing this well. I'm snapping at people more often. My friends are telling me I'm not acting the same. What am I going to do about this?
Right.
And really, it's just optimizing those things that make us function well as human beings. And it starts with the simple stuff. It's almost counterintuitive. People feel that the complexity of our circumstances require a really complex answer, and that's not necessarily the case. Doing things like making sure that you have routines in your life despite the fact that you aren't going to the office anymore, that you're planning things. Hopefully you're planning exercise because that's a big piece of the puzzle here. If we can exercise a little bit each day, even just for a half an hour, and it doesn't mean being a hero in a gym, it means throwing on some sneakers and getting some fresh air and walking at a brisk pace with a sense of purpose. Getting some exercise, making sure that we're putting good, clean food in our bodies, that we're not surviving on instant meals, fast food, things that don't really promote to our bodies running optimally. If we're reaching for a more balanced diet, more vegetables and things that are going to help us stay strong, that's going to help us out. Practicing some mindfulness meditation, slowing our minds down as they're very, very busy will also help out. And, generally just finding ways to take better care of ourselves, avoiding things like alcohol and substances, talking with our families, staying connected in the ways that we're able to. Those are the things that those habits will carry us through to the other side of this in one piece, for sure.
I mean, that's good and practical stuff, man. Is there anything else that you feel like is important that you want to share about just the work you do or how people should be kind of looking perspectives for the pandemic, et cetera?
I think it's important for people to remember that this will have an end. Okay, so I don't want there to be a growing sense of hopelessness. I want people to understand that we are responding to this in real time and trying to optimize outcomes all the time. And so there's going to be an end to this at some point where we are able to navigate this virus. And also that please be aware of what is going on inside of you. Don't wait to ask for help. The faster you get on top of it, the easier it is to take care of. And so, the typical strategies we have for navigating stress, like putting our head down, shouldering through it like a football player, that's not going to work for this. We need to figure out how to be better people and grow and stay strong despite this. And so I think that's the most important thing right now for people to understand is just stay focused, stay well, and make good, healthy choices.
So listen, that was really good. I think there's so much in terms of trying to figure out just how to strategize, because it really has been like, we're only gonna do this for 2 months. Oh, 2 months more, maybe 2 months more, and knowing that there is going to be an end, but also putting practices in place for us to make it to that end, however long that takes, is I think a refreshing and different perspective. And I'm glad that you've been able to kind of share, about all of that.
I appreciate that.
So, Dr. Eric French, thank you for talking to us. It's been a really, really good conversation, and it's been cool to kind of get to know you and your work.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invite. I feel honored to do something like this, and I've had a great time. Thank you.
Thank you to HealthONE for making this event possible and serving as a presenting sponsor for TEDxMileHigh Vision. It's on Saturday. If you don't have your tickets yet, you need to get them. I would thank you guys for joining us. It's been a lot of fun.